Hello everybody and welcome back to Operation Logistics, where we are nearly ready to start working on implementing some routes. However, we have a small problem, and that is currently in our building hexes here that we have open. You can see that this hex right here only has 3 neighbors. This neighbor, and this neighbor, when it should have 5. That's because, or rather it should have 6 neighbors. It should have these 3, which would be up here, as neighbors. So we're going to need to go through this and figure out how exactly we want to implement that. That's going to be intriguing. So I think first thing that we're going to need to do is I think we're going to need to go into our building hex. That was the biome hex. Into the building hex. And we're going to need to change our neighbors here from a list of building hex to instead be a list of what am I thinking of? What did I call that? I called it this is the building. I need the business. I called it the just int3. Okay, so we need that to be a group of int3s. So let's go into the building, and this is going to break everything. The building hex, that is. This is going to break a lot of things. So we need this to be an int3. New list, int3. And of course, cannot convert from building hex to int3 right here when we grab the neighbors. So instead, what we need to be doing is we need to do adding colliders i.getComponent building hex dot, and this will need to be how do we want to do this? I believe the building hex has a reference to its hex index. Yes. So this is going to need to be a new int3. Okay. And grab neighbors is just done at the beginning and only takes into account... Yeah, okay, and it's done with a physics overlap sphere. That's fine. So we need to have this be world hex. And this doesn't actually plan for that right now. Okay. Okay, yeah, that should be fine. We just need to transition this over. So we're going to need to get the world hex, which may not exist at this stage. That's the thing. Should we have it? But no. There's no real way to do that. What I was thinking is maybe what we could do is we could have it be something along the lines of it auto-generates all of these. Rather than doing this the way we're doing this here, we would just essentially hard code-ish how it does it. Because we need it to know about the neighbors in its other areas. So we need it to know about all of its neighbors. So we do need to have this be an int3. That is 100% guaranteed. However, maybe this shouldn't be in building hex. Maybe instead this should be in the hex store, which is here. And then it would need to be a list of lists of int3. So public list int3, And this would be neighbors equals new list int3. We could leave building hex the way it's at right now so that we don't break everything. So we could have this remain as a building hex list. So it's only within the building hexes, but then this would be the authoritative list, essentially. And then we could add in like a... I don't really want to do that. But I was thinking we could add in a get here that would return it, but then output an error, or not really an error, but output a warning saying, hey, maybe you don't want to use this one. Maybe you want to use hexstore.neighbors. But I think this will be fine. So a new list of int3s. And then when we populate this, which I believe is in the world hex, we're going to need to populate that as well. So where do we do that? We do that here. So biome hexes I dot neighbors dot add, and then we add in a new list of int3. And then the question is, when and how do we populate that list? Well, that's something we're going to need to think about. Because once we have this adjacency done, getting our pathfinding and all that set up would be plenty easy, but we have to make sure that our connections work properly. So the question is, do all of these connect, or do just the road connections connect? Just the road connections would be a whole lot easier. So essentially, do we have a list of the road connections in the hex store already? Do not believe we do. Okay. So when we're setting up our biome hexes, we're going to need to go through our neighbors that are in the building hex and add those in. Yeah. The hex index changes when we select the building hex, right? If we go into the building hex and go into the onClick event here, or rather the on mouse over event. So when we select it, it doesn't actually, but that's not relevant. The only thing that's relevant is what biome hex, and because that's all relative to the biome hex and world hex. Okay. Okay. Interesting to note, but not amazingly relevant. So what we need to do is we need to say, do we have a reference to... Well, we can get there from here. So what we need to do is we need to do something along the lines of this. Building hex equals manager, which I believe is the map manager, or the hex manager, manager dot, and we want to not get biome hex dot index, but we want to get just get hex, essentially. Is that in the sub hex manager? That is a lot of commented out stuff. I don't think it is. It should be in the hex manager. But we may have to add that in. Let's check the hex manager quick. Where are we? Here we are. So in the hex manager, we've got our awake, our generate map, our get world hex by index, our get biome hex by index. We don't have a get building hex by index. So we'll go ahead and implement that. Public hex store Exotra, apparently. Get building hex by index, int world hex index, int biome hex index. Actually, we could just pass in an int3. Int3 index, or indices. We'll go with indices. Nope, nope, nope. That's what we wanted. Okay, so world hex equals get world hex by index. So we're going to need to grab this int3, or rather just indices dot world hex. There we go. And then biome hex equals get biome hex by index. And then this is going to be, actually we don't even need to grab the world hex, do we? Because this does that for us. So biome hex equals get biome hex dot index indices dot world hex indices dot biome hex. So that gives us our biome hex. Or does it? That gives us our hex store. Oh, this returns a world hex, but this returns a hex store. Right. Okay, so that gets us our biome hex. But this doesn't actually get us the building hex, right? Does it? No, it does not. Like, realistically, we want to do world hex equals get world hex by index. And this will be indices dot world hex. And then we want to return world hex dot biome hexes is a hex store. Let's see here. I think we have a list of our generated hexes in here, right? Like, we've got our biome hexes here. Kinda doesn't, does it? I think we need to do subhex manager dot subhexes. Yeah, that's what we need. Return subhex world hex dot subhex manager dot subhexes indices dot biome hex dot subhexes indices dot building hex. This is the subhex manager? Yeah. Dot subhexes. And that's a building hex. And yeah, we want to return building hex. There we go. Okay. There. So now we can get our building hex. Manager.get building hex by index. And we just want to pass in our int3 indices. So we want to pass in our current position, essentially. So this is going to be well, this is just setting up the biome hexes here. We want to, when we're setting up the buildings, no, this is right. The biome hexes are already set up. This is setting up the buildings. What am I talking about? You can tell I've been working on other things. Okay, so building hex equals manager.getBuildingHex by index, and we want to go ahead and have this be biome hexes I, because we want this to be an int3, right? So we want to pass in a new int3, and we want this to be, I don't think we need the global namespace, Visual Studio, thank you very much. We want this to be, actually, we already have it, new building.location. So we can get our building hex here, and then we can do something along the lines of, for each building hex neighbor in hex.neighbors, then we can add it into this list here, and then we can check to see if it's a connector, and if it is, then we can connect it up. So for each building hex neighbor in hex.neighbors, we would want this to be something along the lines of biome hexes I dot neighbors dot add, and we want this to be neighbor dot, and this would be what, hex ID is the only thing we've got here, or rather hex index is the only thing we've got here. So we want to pass in something along the lines of new int3, and this is the building hex that we have right now. So we are going to pass in new building dot location dot world hex and new building dot location dot biome hex. Come on, there we go. Okay. Cannot convert from int3 to list of int3. Uh-huh. Hang on a moment. So, okay. That's interesting. So, the problem here is that we're trying to add to the neighbors list. We've added a new list int3 here. So, I think we just pass in neighbors I dot add. Or we pass in hex index. Yeah, that's what we pass in. No, that's the world hex. What am I talking about? We pass in new building dot location dot building hex. Okay. I'm pretty sure that gets us where we want to go. And then we need to check to see if building hex is equal to this one, which is 15, this one, which is 21, this one, 26, this one, 32, this one, 37, or this one, 10. So let's go ahead and say if new building dot location dot building hex equals any of those, and those were 10, and this isn't going to work exactly, but I just want to do 10, 15, 21, 26, 32, or 37. Like so. So obviously, we need to have all of these in here. And I think we'll do like 2 per line. Like so. Okay. There we go. So if we are any of these, this is a road entry. And so we need to connect it up. So essentially, we need to do a switch statement here. New building dot location dot building hex. However, it is time for me to put a cut in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we will implement this switch and get our interconnections set up. See you all then.